Let's go on a trip. We're going to travel 400 billion light years straight through the ceiling. What we're going to go and see is a galaxy. It's called NG 6240, discovered a couple of years ago, and what's remarkable about this galaxy is that it has two supermassive black holes coexisting in the same galaxy. And what happens, apparently, astrophysicists tell us in this situation, is that these two massive forces of suction gradually draw each other towards each other in a sort of circle, a mutually assured circle of death, till they get closer and closer and closer, until eventually they draw each other into each other and become one and the same thing. And this mutually assured dance of death is called the Mephisto waltz. Now you might say to me, but Adam, we don't need to travel 400 billion light years to see this. We can see this happening in the high street around us all the time. We see brands from different players in the same category obsessed with what each other's doing. One does a stripy version, the other does a stripy version. One does twisty caps, the other does twisty caps. They are locked in a Mephisto waltz all of their own. And as a result, they get less and less differentiated, more and more similar, price differentiation is eroded, brand loyalty is eroded, eventually they will implode surely and become one and the same thing. So what do we need to do to make sure that we are not falling into the Mephisto waltz? The first thing we need to do is divide everything we do on our brand into one of just three buckets. First bucket is brilliant basics. These are things that we need to do to compete successfully in the category, and we need to do them brilliantly, but they will not in and of themselves make us different from anyone else in that category. The second bucket is compelling difference. These are things that we're going to do, that are doing, in every aspect of our business, in every aspect of our brand experience, that are pushing us apart from the competition, that are putting clear water between us and everyone else. And the third bucket is changing the game. And these are things that we are doing that will make us different, not simply within this category, but actually within any category. These will be extraordinary and surprising in terms of the customer's experience of us as a brand in any category, not simply our own. And the second thing that we're going to do is stop and think about what kind of brand we are and what our ambitions are. So, if we're a market leader, very crudely, it might be okay for most of what we do to be in the brilliant basics box, because actually we're simply protecting the status quo. But if we're a challenger, if we're somebody who needs to grow by changing the way the consumer thinks about this category, changing criteria for choice, we need to have a much higher proportion of what we do in that compelling different box. And we need to learn from the challengers who've been this way before to help us understand how to populate that box. Learn from them in terms of the sources of inspiration that they might have, the sources of insight that they have, and how they look way beyond their own category in terms of understanding how to think and behave with the consumer. Learning from them in the sense that they'll need to have a very differentiated sense of what they stand for and what they believe in that will drive differentiation into every aspect of their brand experience. Learning from how they use ideas and symbols to almost theatrically prompt the consumer to sit back and reevaluate what they thought they wanted from the category and why they might want something else completely. Learning from them in terms of their recognition that actually having the idea is a small part of making it happen. Hope, as the Marines would say, is not a method, and how they're going to need to sacrifice in some areas and overcommit in others to really bring those compellingly different ideas to life. So let's step back and look at whether our brand is locked, consciously or unconsciously, in a Mephisto waltz with other brand or brands within its category. Let's recognize that if we want to reverse that, if we want to change that, we need to look at building in a much higher degree of compelling difference to everything that we do. Let's recognize that the brands we need to learn from, to be inspired from, in helping us do that, are other brands that have been this way before, who we're going to call challengers, often who've had to create a much higher degree of compelling difference with significantly less resource. That's interesting for us. And finally, let's recognize that what we can learn from challengers is an entire strategic approach that will help us in everything that we do, from inspiration through strategy to execution. So let's do this very simple test. Let's draw out these three buckets on a piece of paper in front of us. Let's divide everything we're doing this year into one of those three buckets. And let's look at what the population of compelling difference and changing the game is. And I'm betting that we'll have quite a small population in compelling difference. And I'm further betting that most of that population will be in terms of communications, the things we are saying in advertising. And my challenge to us is that really enough? Don't we really need to build a much higher degree of challenger thinking into everything that we do?